Hey bros. So Yuan shared a great post on Facebook regarding a recent breakup that he experienced and the sort of emotional suffering that he's now feeling regarding the loss of that relationship. Now, as many of you know, this topic is very dear to me. In fact, I've been through quite a few breakups in my life. I've had 2 divorces after 7-year marriages, and I had a third 7-year relationship which ended. And in each case, I felt quite a bit of suffering for quite a long period of time. So I'm very intimately familiar with the situation that Yuan is describing. And I would say most humans have experienced this in some way. I've probably experienced it for more of my life than I would like to. But it's actually the reason that I began my self-development journey, was that I needed to figure out how to untangle these thoughts in my head, let go of the pain and the suffering that I was facing. And the good news is you absolutely can. So let's talk about that a little bit. Now, first I want to talk about the perspective after the relationship ends. For me, there were a lot of points of pain. I felt somehow that I'd been cheated out of happiness, that all this hard work that I'd put in and this commitment that I had to this person and in this relationship had somehow not been valued, that this person had taken it away from me, or that the universe had taken it away from me unfairly in some way. I didn't really think of it as entitlement, and yet I felt that I deserved a future with this person, that I'd been investing in that I believed I was going to have a future with this person, and had unfairly been ripped from me. I felt that this person didn't value me enough, and as much as I valued them, and that somehow there was this unfair disparity in how we saw each other in the relationship. I felt somehow that I'd failed, that I wasn't good enough to keep the relationship. Now, a fair bit of that, I think, was a nice guy syndrome side effect, which is that when you put someone on a pedestal and you see them as almost flawless and beautiful, godly creature, then you automatically see them as being better than you. If the relationship fails for whatever reason, it's hard to blame them for any part of that decision. And so you end up searching for your own blame. You're not blaming yourself for the failure of the relationship. And I did that quite heavily. I felt like I must not be good enough, or I must have somehow dropped the ball, or I must not be good at relationships. I had all sorts of sort of tortuous, self-abusive thoughts going on, which led to some pretty deep depression for periods of my life that were far too long. All because I really bought into these stories of not good enough. And I also felt that I would never find another relationship this good. I built up so much fantasy about where this relationship was going to go that it was very difficult for any other relationship that I could rationally consider to compare to this fantasy future I had with this person, which was also very unhelpful, and it only amplified the depression and the sense of failure. I felt pain. I felt grief at losing this relationship. I felt depression, this sort of cyclical, can't get out of these thoughts in my head. I don't see a way to the light. And I felt resentment as well. I felt that somehow this person had treated me unfairly by kind of rejecting all the hard work and the significant contribution that I gave to them. The huge value that I put on this relationship and commitment weren't rewarded. And again, very strongly kind of nice guy behavior, but that was my life. Now, it took me a long time to understand that all of these things that were creating the pain for me were primarily about perspective. They're primarily about how I saw that relationship, and it came down to really 2 things, which were expectation and fantasy. Okay? If I look very honestly at the pain in the relationship, and now I can do this, I've got the reflection skills and the journaling skills to be able to see this clearly. At the time I didn't. So it was just thoughts bouncing around in my head like a tornado. But if I look at it very honestly, I can see that a very small amount of the pain, like 1%, was actually based on losing this person. Okay? The fact that this person was no longer in my life as a romantic partner was actually a very small amount of the pain. I was okay by myself. I could eat, I could be happy, I could hang out with friends, I could get exercise, I could meet new people, I could form new sexual connections if I wanted to. Only 1% was based on the fact that this person, that the relationship had changed with them. 99% of the pain, by far the vast majority, was based on the stories that I attached to the relationship failing. The self-abusive thoughts as to how I had failed, how I'd somehow been cheated, how I wasn't valued, to the resentment, to all of the reasons that I attached to the failure of the relationship. Now, this ultimately was very, very unhelpful and created a huge amount of turmoil for me internally until I was able to really see and reflect on that. Now, here's the thing. When we look at a relationship, we tend to define a relationship as being about the future. When we say I have a relationship, what we usually mean is I am committed to this person and they are committed to me, and tomorrow and the next day and the next week and the next month, I expect that we are still going to be in a relationship. We define as a relationship as a thing about the future. But in reality, if you look at it with absolute honesty, there is no such thing as a relationship in the future. A relationship only exists in the present moment and in the past. It only exists as memories and experiences. Okay? So what we define as a relationship has a lot more to do with the history we've had with this person than about the future that we're going to have. But we don't see that clearly. Great example. If you've ever known anybody who has Alzheimer's or dementia or has experienced some kind of major memory loss, when you walk into the room to see your great-grandmother who has Alzheimer's, she may not recognize you. For her, doesn't matter that she's known you for 30 years. There is zero relationship there because the memories are gone. All right? This is a very, very important thing to consider, is that without those memories, the relationship cannot exist. Okay? As humans, we don't generally walk down the street, see somebody and say, relationship, and then instantly spend the rest of our lives together. It's not about the future. It's about the experiences that we've had, and that those experiences then create the expectations and the fantasies of something continuing in the future. The reality is, as Dan is very fond of saying, a relationship is something you choose every single day. Do I want to see this person one more time? If the answer is yes, you get a little bit more relationship. If the answer is ever no, then that relationship may change. And that's absolutely okay. You haven't lost anything. The whole existence of that relationship, those experiences that you shared with this person, are yours to treasure forever. And no one can take them away, except possibly Mother Nature with Alzheimer's or dementia, which would be very unfortunate. But you can cherish that relationship forever. It doesn't matter that tomorrow you may no longer have this kind of same relationship with this person ever again. That's a very important thing to realize. If I look at the relationships that I've had in my life, and I cherish them for the experiences they gave me, the lessons, the pleasure I was able to give to this person that no one else can ever give in the same way, the pleasure that they were able to give to me, the new lessons and things that we learned about each other and about ourselves and about the world. Every one of those relationships is a gold mine of memories and experiences that I can treasure more than anything. If, on the other hand, I am looking at the fact that those relationships ended and that my expectation was they should not have ended, I can only see those relationships as pain. Think about that. All right, so what's the solution for this? How do I approach relationships now? I have a very different way of looking at relationships. And what's happened for me in my recent relationships over the past, say, 4 years, is that I look at relationships as a very dynamic, living and breathing thing. And like any living and breathing thing, it's very likely to end someday. In fact, until humans somehow become immortal and we somehow invent the utopian relationship, every relationship is going to end. One of us is going to die. We're going to drift apart. Something is going to happen that ends this relationship. So to imagine that this relationship should last forever is immediately a very, very unhelpful perspective to take. You're always going to be disappointed if you adopt that perspective. So seeing a relationship as a living and breathing organic thing has been very helpful, and it's drastically influenced how I look at my relationships. Today I might have a very close friendship with someone who's very special to me. We have a very strong intellectual connection. We have a very strong emotional connection. Perhaps we enjoy doing a lot of different activities together, going on trips. Tomorrow that relationship could change and become something different. It might become physically intimate. It might become sexual or romantic. It might become something that creates entirely new experiences and memories for us to share. And then a few months from now, it might change again. There's nothing wrong with this happening. This is the nature of living things. So it's very important to be able to embrace this. So now, when a relationship changes and I feel a sense of loss or sadness that, I wasn't really ready for this relationship to change, that isn't really where I wanted it to go. Here's how I reflect to keep my perspective healthy and useful to me. First of all, I look at the stories that I'm attaching to the relationship that create the pain for me. I'll sit down and journal them. I'll look for the stories that tell me that I give myself as to why the relationship ended, how I failed, where I screwed up, why I should suffer. Often I'll actually look for reasons why I should suffer. And the story that I'll never be happy again. I'll look for and list these stories as I'm reflecting on all of the points of pain. What are the words that come to mind to describe that pain? The thoughts that come into my head. I write those down. And I reflect on those. And I recognize them as being attached to fantasies and expectations. I can see that they are all about predicting the future. A future that was never mine to control. Okay? Then I shift my perspective from what I think I lost, this imaginary future, to what I gained in this relationship. I focus instead on this wonderful experience I had with this person. I reflected deeply on all of the joys and the pleasures that we gave each other. I reflect on the beautiful memories that we created that no one will ever be able to take away. I reflect on the pleasures we were able to give each other and the experiences that we uniquely created, just the two of us. I reflect on how she added to my life and how I added to her life and how we made each other better people. I reflect on how our relationship has changed. Perhaps it's now become a very close friendship. And I find that the friendships I've created with previous romantic partners are some of the strongest friendships and the most intimately honest friendships that I've ever had. They're really something special because we know each other and trust each other. We've been vulnerable and authentic with each other in ways at levels that I've never been with most of my other friends. So I really appreciate these things, and I actually spend time reflecting on the joys of that relationship. I'll go through photos. I'll create a kind of photo album. I'll start an audio or a video journal, and I'll put all these files together as I treasure and remember this relationship and how it's added to my life and how it's changed me. This process of focusing my attention on what I got out of this experience has been one of the most healing things I've ever done. It allows me to process, it allows me to give closure to the relationship, allows me to see the relationship in a truthful light for how it added to my life, rather than this fake, fantasy, expectation-filled future, which was never mine to begin with. At the end, the key perspective here is that there's no reason to be hard on yourself. You haven't failed at anything. You've gained everything by having this relationship, and you've lost nothing by losing it. The fact that that relationship has changed, is just part of life. Everything changes. Okay? What you can do now, focus on doing the things that give you respect and appreciation for yourself. Basic valued living. If you can focus on being somebody that you can appreciate and respect, then the sense of needing someone else to validate you simply evaporates. Other people can give you experiences, but if they choose to move on, that's absolutely fine. You've got yourself to fall back on, to be your own foundation instead of trying to build your house on someone else's sense of approval and validation. This is a very key point. Most of all, appreciate what life gives you. It's very, very special, and it's uniquely yours.